It is over for the genocide deniers. The United Nations has concluded that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Its independent commission of inquiry has reported, and it has joined with what is now an overwhelming consensus. That is a consensus of genocide scholars, with a motion concluding Israel is committing genocide, passed by a margin of 86% at the International Association of Genocide Scholars earlier this month, as well as NGOs such as Amnesty International and Médecins Sans Frontières, Israeli human rights organizations such as B'Tselem and Physicians for Human Rights. We could go on. Even the BBC, which has whitewashed and legitimized Israel's genocide all the way through, has splashed on the United Nations Commission report as its main story on its website. Right now, as I'll come on to, Israel is seeking to complete the final stages of the genocide by obliterating what remains of Gaza City so that a surviving population can be driven into a concentration camp and then all living Palestinians be removed, ending the existence of the Palestinian population of Gaza. All of this is just the stated official policy of the Israeli government, by the way. I'm not reading between the lines. By the way, this report comes just days after the British government, via a letter signed by the Foreign Secretary David Lammy, denied that Israel is committing genocide, saying that the British government has concluded that, as things stand, they do not believe Israel is committing genocide because they know better than any expert on the issue, including now this commission, which was, of course, reporting to the United Nations on its behalf. Now, the report goes through various crimes committed by the Israeli state in Gaza, such as entire extended families being wiped out, the collapse in life expectancy in Gaza from 75 and a half years to 40 and a half years in the first 12 months of the genocide. They note that's an underestimate because it excludes indirect impacts on mortality, like the inability to access healthcare and food. It notes that at least 46% of recorded deaths are women and children, an avalanche of attacks on residential buildings and tents for displaced people after Israel resumed its genocidal onslaught this March, an internal intelligence report from Israel itself that 83% of those killed in Gaza are civilians. It details the use of heavy, unguided munitions with a wide margin of error in densely populated residential areas. They quote one military expert who says Israel is dropping in less than a week what the United Nations was dropping in Afghanistan in a year in a much smaller, much more densely populated area. They note on many occasions Israeli bombardment has destroyed apartment blocks, killing almost all the civilians therein. They note nearly 500 attacks on healthcare facilities between the 7th of October 2023 and the 30th of July 2024, deliberate attacks on medical personnel and aid workers, the fatal consequences of the blockade of humanitarian aid, not least medicine and military equipment, and noting, for example, the deaths resulting to babies and pregnant women. They note how the establishment of the Orwellian-named Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has been accompanied by mass slaughters of Palestinians seeking aid. I would note that a new report by the New Humanitarian outlet has found that Israel has killed nearly 3,000 Palestinians, at least, as they attempted to get aid since the genocide began. And the report notes that 1,373 of those were between May and July 2025, with the arrival of the so-called GHF. As for the slaughtered civilians, the UN Commission concludes the following. Having concluded in its previous reports that the crime against humanity of murder and the war crime of willful killing have been committed, the Commission analysed the scale of the killings and concluded that the killings of Palestinian civilians were conducted in a large-scale manner over a significant period of time and widespread geographical area. The victims of the bombing were not singled out or targeted as individual civilians. On the contrary, victims were targeted collectively due to their identity as Palestinians. The Commission therefore concluded that the Israeli authorities have committed the crime against humanity of extermination in the Gaza Strip by killing Palestinian civilians. This is a really important point. The Commission finds that the Israeli state is knowingly killing large numbers of civilians for no other reason than they are Palestinians. They also find that the Israeli state intended to target and attack Palestinian civilians, including children, women, persons with disabilities, and older persons during their evacuation within the designated safe zones and in shelters. Of course, the nonsense of safe zones designed purely for the consumption of Western media outlets. So Israel could say, oh, we've got these safe zones. There were no safe zones in Gaza. And they have deliberately killed civilians systematically in those safe zones, as the report concludes. It goes on, specifically in relation to children, the Commission found that it was foreseeable on many occasions that civilians, including children, would be present in the area targeted by the Israeli security forces for example, in residential buildings, UNRWA schools, medical facilities, and within designated safe zones, and that the Israeli security forces intended to target Palestinian civilians in Gaza, including children. In other words, Israel is deliberately killing Palestinian children. The Commission also notes that the Israeli authorities knew that their military operations and the duration of those operations were killing large numbers of people and did not intervene to change the means and methods of warfare. Indeed, they did the opposite, and that therefore the Israeli authorities intended to kill as many Palestinians as possible through its military operations in Gaza since the 7th of October 2023, and knew that the means and methods of warfare employed would cause mass deaths of Palestinians, including children. This is not collateral damage. This is not simply, mass slaughter through neglect, which itself is criminal, by the way. It's deliberate killing of civilians on an industrial scale. That's what we're talking about. The Commission report covers other significant elements of the crime of genocide, like causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group from mass injuries, with the largest cohort of child amputees in modern history, and mass displacement, environmental destruction, severe mistreatment, including being physically attacked and sexually abused in detention. It details sexual and gender-based violence against both Palestinian men and women. The Commission goes through how Israel deliberately inflicted on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, a crucial plank of genocide. That includes the destruction of structures and land essential to Palestinians, including the widespread destruction of residential complexes and entire neighborhoods, including agricultural lands, public facilities, religious and cultural sites, schools, universities, and hospitals. Most of Gaza, of course, has been razed from the face of the earth. The destruction of medical facilities and murder of medical staff means the denial, of course, of medical care on an industrial scale to the surviving population. Continual displacement, lack of shelter, lack of toilets, lack of adequate sanitation means infectious diseases spread like wildfire. The report, of course, looks at the systematic blocking of food and other life essentials, and we should note starvation is at the core of the International Criminal Court's arrest warrants against the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Then there's measures intended to prevent bursts within the group, another plank of genocide, with attacks on healthcare facilities and on the largest fertility clinic, which destroyed around 4,000 embryos and 1,000 sperm samples and unfertilized eggs. The Commission goes through some of the statements of genocidal intent by Israeli leaders, and indeed, no state has been so open, so brazen about its genocidal intent in history as the genocide was happening. This is why the Commission concludes on reasonable grounds that the Israeli state have committed and are continuing to commit the following actus reus of genocide against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, namely 1, killing members of the group, 2, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, 3, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, and 4, imposing measures intended to prevent bursts within the group. The combination of genocidal intent by Israeli leaders and officials, statements of genocidal intent, and the pattern of conduct is why the Commission concludes that Israel has committed genocide and is continuing to commit genocide. There are no rebuttals to this evidence, no coherent, convincing rebuttals. It is overwhelming and comprehensive. There is a reason why there is a consensus that this is genocide, and the only response Israel has are hysterical smears and lies. Let's hear some of those smears put to Chris Sidoti, the co-author of the report.
The Israeli Foreign Ministry today decried a distorted and false report and said that 3 individuals, so referring to the Commission of Inquiry, 3 individuals serving as Hamas proxies notorious for their openly anti-Semitic positions. Could you please comment on that?
These reports should be taken seriously, but honestly, the Israeli responses are becoming so boring. They say the same thing every time. They're producing the responses by ChatGPT these days, and they spend so much money in the Foreign Ministry on propaganda. You'd think that they would actually come up with something original. I would want them to engage with the evidence, but they never engage with the evidence. They put the report into ChatGPT, and then they put out the standard response. So no one takes it seriously, and Jamie, you shouldn't either.
No report has been so confessed to as it happened, or so documented as it happened. But Israel has deliberately slaughtered Palestinian journalists in the biggest slaughter of journalists ever, as well as blocking international journalists from entering Gaza, all in order to suppress the truth. But right now, Israel has launched a ground offensive in Gaza City while destroying what remains of it. It is destroying remaining high-rise buildings with no military value to doing so. As Carl Bildt, the former Conservative Prime Minister of Sweden, puts it, there was an obvious Israeli plan to make the present Gaza City uninhabitable. All major buildings are being erased. There should be nothing for Palestinians to come back to. There are still hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza City. Others have fled, although there was no safe place to flee to. And it is clear that the Israeli military will treat them as legitimate targets. Last night, Gaza was being bombarded so heavily that windows were being blown from the homes of Israeli settlements over the border, reportedly. And it was also reported that as far away as Tel Aviv, the bombings could be felt. A genocide in plain sight. It was always obvious what Israel was going to do. This is a heinous crime facilitated by Western governments and Western media outlets. We could not, I am afraid to say, save the people of Gaza. We must now fight to save as many individuals as we can. And we must fight for accountability so that the perpetrators of this historic abomination face the consequences of what they have done. Please like and subscribe, leave your thoughts in your comments, help us take on the pro-genocide media at patreon.com/OwnJez84. Sorry about the alarming black eye, no idea how, I genuinely don't know what happened. I haven't been attacked that I'm aware of. I woke up with this yesterday, so tried to make up, but if you're wondering what's happened, I'm fine. Just have a random black eye for no reason. Anyway, share the video, press like and subscribe, help us. I've got this documentary coming soon from my experiences in Palestine. I've just come back from Palestine. So, check that out. I'll speak to you soon.